and welcome to another episode of Influence and Growth Mastery. Today, we're going to be talking about sales skills first and everything else second with Michelle Terpstra with Startup Sales Leadership Institute. Michelle, it's such a pleasure to have you on my show today. Please take a moment and introduce yourself and your business.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to your show. I am so excited to provide some really practical ways that your audience can increase their sales and also just enjoy the process as well, because it's a huge part of sales and growing a business. So hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Terpstra, and I am the CEO and founder of the Startup Sales Leadership Institute. In the last 3 years, we've helped over 1,000 businesses master their sales skills, create sales systems, and hire their first or next best sales professional. I am extremely passionate about what I get to do, and my background that made me qualified to come in here and to do this and to open up the Institute is I spent 10 years working for 3 Fortune 500s in sales. Then I worked at a consulting agency as well, where I learned all about education, training, and consulting. And I absolutely love that I get to show up every day and help entrepreneurs and small business owners make money and grow their sales teams. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Yes, that is so exciting. And I love that background. Tell us a little bit, Michelle, about the story behind your shift from, the Fortune 500 companies and from the corporate sales leader to starting your own business.
So it was January of 2020, which if we're all remembering dates here, it's 3 months before the world shut down, right?
Yes.
And I went to my husband and I'm like, so I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to work for a big company anymore. I want to start a consulting company, and I'm ready to go right now. I just need your support. And he looked at me, and I mean, mind you, this is a very stable company, 401k, benefits, profit sharing, multiple 6 figures. And I'm just like, I want to give it all up. Right. And He said, I believe in you and I know you can do it. And so that's exactly what I did. And what happened was, because I teach remote virtual selling, it was perfect timing for what happened over the next couple of years. So my business exploded because so many sales teams and so many people were grounded that they had to figure out how to leverage social media and Zoom sales calls to grow their business. So I've had an incredible journey and a great opportunity to help so many businesses do that. And even as we have some people going back into the office, sales teams are traveling again, there is so much benefit to any organization that's mastered social selling and the virtual sales call. You can increase profit, you can reach more people, and you can close more sales. And so I'm equally as passionate now that we even have people back in the field, because it's so much more fun to have both. You can still go to networking meetings, you can still travel and see clients, and you can really amplify your impact and make more sales leveraging the virtual world as well.
Yeah, so I can somewhat relate to you with your story, because I remember I had already started my consulting business when that happened. And I remember I was in an in-person training session when pretty much everything shut down. I was actually doing some training in a financial institution. And at the end of the day, I had that dreaded email in my inbox that said the banks were closing the following day. And so I thought to myself, but this training is not over. And that I knew that was going to largely impact, training for me. And so I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So it's kind of like you've got to go online. You've got to do this socially. And so It is amazing at how really easily that people adapted to that. And now today, I know that you're seeing this in your world. People are somewhat struggling to want to go back to the offices. We do so much of this, online. So what is some of the common misconceptions that you encounter about sales for people, wanting to to do startups or even online brands? Are you seeing a lot of misconceptions today?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we can talk about right now. So there's basically two different categories of businesses that I'll speak to right now, because I think it'll be helpful to your audience depending on what part of their journey they're in. So the first category we have is the solopreneur, that is a coach, a consultant, or service provider. And what I mean by solopreneur, if it's a new word to anybody listening, it just means that you yourself and I are your only person in the organization. Right. You might use freelancers or, occasionally have somebody help you, but it's really you driving client acquisition, fulfillment, marketing, all of these things. And what happens when we start a business like that, and I was there not that long ago all by myself, and you don't just get to be a consultant and go help people, or a coach and go help people. There's 400 hats you have to wear as a small business owner, as a startup. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bad education out there that has you start with other skill sets first and focusing on areas that honestly don't matter. What matters is you have clients so you can build a business, right? And so that's why you're in your introduction, I talked about sales skills first. And everyone wants to avoid it. Okay. It's the truth. When you're a solopreneur, most solopreneurs want to avoid sales, and they hope that their marketing or other things they do will get them business, like referrals and things like that. And does it work? Yes. Is it consistent? No. If you do not have a sales engine that's dependable and consistent, you do not have a business. You've just employed yourself. It's very, very, very different. And so I'm very passionate about making sure that all of my clients, or anybody who follows me on social media and enjoys my free training, that sales skills are first. That means when you wake up in the morning, you better be prospecting. Every day you should have sales calls until you're completely booked out. And then at that point, you can then adjust your cadence to make sure you're still staying in people's minds for when you need a new client. Because what happens is what I call the fulfillment loop. So for solopreneurs, so it means I sell. I'm booked out. And then you fulfill. And then all of a sudden people are either done with their retainers, you're done with the project, or whatever it is. And then it's like you wake up one day and you're like, what the heck? I have no idea where my next client's going to come from. The panic ensues, the fire in the chest. This happens to everyone. And so what's important is making sure that you have a sales engine that's appropriate for your growth goal, and as a solopreneur, that you are consistently filling your pipeline. You know how to have a powerful sales call, and that you can turn on the tap when you need to. So I'm going to take a short breath before I go into the second category, but I'm very passionate about that. Any questions along that line?
No, go ahead and go into your second one. I do have a question, but I'm going to wait till you're finished.
All right. Awesome. Okay. And then the second category is what I refer to as the scaling CEO. It's where you're done being a solopreneur and you have hit a consistent revenue of, usually I see this around the $250,000 mark, but it can be lower or higher depending on your business. And that's when you're like, I've nailed sales. My sales engine is built. I know how to get clients, but I could really grow my business and scale a lot faster if I wasn't having to spend all of this time doing sales. I need to consider hiring someone to come in and take this over for me. And what happens at that point is then the same thing that happened to you in the very beginning, where you start freaking out a little bit, because it's not normal for a solopreneur to know how to be a sales leader. That's not something, usually a skill set they've learned unless they have a sales background. So it's a major transition. And there's a lot of things that need to be done in order for that to be successful. And so what I saw going on in the industry was a lot of people were then outsourcing their sales. So closing agencies, appointment setting agencies, all of these agency models, which is fine. And it's a Band-Aid. But the problem is that if you're a scaling CEO and you want to hit millions and millions of dollars a year in your business, I hope that you're trying to build a business that's worth something. And if you don't have an internal sales team, you devalue your company and you won't get as much money as you want if you ever do want to sell. It also risks a lot of things. You don't have control over your brand. You don't have control over what they say or do. And you're trusting a third party to represent your brand. And that gives me a little bit of a sick to my stomach feel. And I don't want that for my clients, and I don't want it for me. And so I teach CEOs how to step into sales leadership and build an internal team that's on brand, that's a natural extension of themselves, and is committed to the core values and the mission of the company so that they stay for a long time. And I absolutely love that part of the business so much. But the biggest misconception there is that you have to be like a $4, $5, $6 million company to hire a salesperson. And that's just not true. You really should start thinking about it around the $250,000 mark. And there's a few things that have to be in place in order for you to have success with that. But I would really encourage anyone listening right now that's at that point to think about hiring a salesperson, because it can literally take 75% of the time that you spend on sales off your plate and 3x your growth. So there we go.
Let me ask you a question. I'm gonna skip the question that I was going to ask you before, because it really came down to that fear factor that most startups have. Let's go ahead and talk about this, the part that you're talking about now when it comes to, hiring a team and starting to scale.
Yep.
When it comes to building that team, they may already have individuals on the team that they've hired, but they really didn't utilize them in the aspect of selling. But now they want them to start selling, or maybe they use them in social media roles. But to grow the company, everybody needs to be a salesperson. And so when you start having, I should say everybody, there are specific roles that you hire people for as you begin to become a huge company. But as you're just starting out to build that sales team, I'm talking about, but everybody should be in a position to sell. So, do you teach, or I would love to know your opinion, when it comes to that, do you have a revenue goal that you teach the leaders that each of those individuals should be worth, or what they should bring in before they should hire the next salesperson? Does that make sense?
Yes. So I'm going to break this down in a few areas, and then I'll answer your question on the end, because there's some context we need to put into this. So first of all, yes, you're absolutely right. Usually when somebody's ready to hire their salesperson, they have maybe like one or two internal people that they may rely on for a lot of things, may or may not be employees, depending on your structure, all of the things. So in my experience, about 50% of the time, you can take one of those people and turn them into a salesperson. The other 50% of the time, you absolutely cannot. There's a concept that's called right person, wrong seat. And it is really, really important to remember that, because I've gone into 8 and 9 figure businesses that have closers in the wrong seat. We move them to account management. So it's really important that you understand the characteristics of what makes someone successful in their sales roles. There's lots of different sales roles that make up a sales team, and this is an important thing to talk about right now. We have sales development reps, which act as appointment setters, more front-end funnel. They bring them through the mid-funnel. They book calls on your calendar. We have closers that take the calls and actually close them. And we have account managers that then make sure that client stays on as a client and either upsells, cross-sells, or whatever else is, whatever opportunities, renews, for an example, right? Then there's the VP of sales that then would manage that team eventually. That would be the full structure of an assembly line. The other option is the island method, and the island method hires business development managers. That's what my business is set up for. So my business development managers do full cycle sales. So they're required to prospect, to generate their own leads, opportunities, book their calls. I pay them more to do all of those things, but for my business, it makes sense to have them do full cycle. Then my marketing arm is my marketing arm all focuses on pushing leads to them as well. So they have warm up leads that the marketing department creates as well. So there's a lot of dynamics that are moving here. So when you're trying to decide, do I move a person or do I hire a person, and what revenue numbers do we need to be at? The way that I would challenge everyone to look at that is that if they're hiring a brand new salesperson, then I hire mine 1099 commission only in the beginning. So there is very low risk for the business owner to follow that model. And there are plenty of people who will say yes to that because the commissions are so high. But in order to entice someone to come on as commission only, you have to have high commissions, which means your profit margins and your pricing may need to be adjusted. That's something that I help people do. It also means that you have to be able to streamline their onboarding training. You have to expedite it, because what happens is if it takes too long to get them selling, they're going to lose motivation and they're going to walk away because they're not being paid, right? And then if they also need to be tied back to the core values and the mission of the company, because that's another reason they'll stay committed and they'll wait it out and they'll wait for their first deal. Okay. So that's one model that doesn't require the strictness of understanding how much revenue you have in your business or how much they need to bring in order to bring them into your company and to see profit and revenue growth. If you're bringing someone in as an employee, then I would guide and mentor that client to run the numbers. We need to run the numbers, understand the profit and the cost of goods of everything that you're selling to determine what that number is, what the commission rate can be, what the base salary can be. And we work backwards from the business first.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So
it's unfortunately not a canned answer. It can't be like, 200,000 or 100,000 or whatever it could be. But because it's it is so dependent on that particular business, cost of goods, profit margin, and offers.
Yeah. And I like that approach. There are some canned opinions out there, for sure. But, but I like the way that you're saying that. So, how do you ensure that sales strategies remain ethical and still be profitable? We've seen in past, we'll use, I'll throw out the Wells Fargo thing, and that goes to banking, which was my prior background. So, I've stayed in the loop about that, but there's all types of sales entities out there. And, when you're paying commissions, it always gets interesting. And so I always love to hear when people are in the commission market, how they keep things ethical and still be profitable. So in your structure of teaching, how do you handle that, or how do you instruct businesses to keep a great eye on the ethicalness of their teams?
I love that question. So first of all, my first thing I have to say is it's tone from the top. That happens every single time. So if there is a sleazy sales team, there's usually a sleazy leader, and you can track it right back. So that would be the first thing. You can smell it. And reps don't come in. Reps don't come in and just do that on their own accord. There is a reason why. So there's either other reps that are doing it, so then they felt like, right? Or there is an issue with tone from the top, which the other reps wouldn't have done it if there wasn't. So first of all, that needs to be solved. So if you have a sales leader or a C-level executive that is not leading with integrity, then that needs to be addressed. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is transparency. So for example, for my virtual sales teams, we record every single call. And it goes into a repository and it is reviewed and it's audited. There's an AI coaching model to it, and the sales leader also reviews them, and they're public to the team. And transparency makes people behave. And when there is not transparency and you can hide things, that's a risk to the business and the brand. It's not good for the client. It's not good for anyone. And so that is something that I hold my sales leaders and my CEOs accountable to, because if there is no transparency in what's being communicated, then all of that becomes really, really risky. And I've seen it happen with agencies that don't have the same moral compass or ethical guidelines. So they bend the rules, and then the business doesn't know, and it kicks them in the butt when they get the client and it was a misaligned client. Right? So this happens all of the time. And to touch on your point of profitability is the thing is people just don't want to do the work to actually figure out how to sell. If you understand sales and you study psychology, emotional intelligence, nonverbal, all the things you should study, and you have the infrastructure built where marketing and sales are intertwined and helping each other, then you could be equally or more profitable than any sales, any sleazy tactic that's out there. And I strongly believe that. And it also impacts the lifetime value of a client. So maybe you'll get more front end deals, but they're not sticking around. And you know what? That costs companies so much in the long run. So don't just look at top line. Look at like, how long are clients staying with you? Are they loyal? Are they sending referrals? Like, that is critical. And it's a representation of your sales process.
Study their reviews. Yeah, completely agree with you. So what do you think are some good core skills that entrepreneurs should master when focusing on, number one, sales, but branding and marketing their businesses?
Yes, I have a really strong personal brand. I have over 450 brand photos. I have brand colors. I have brand tone. I have a brand and marketing guide that every freelancer is given. And, so the first thing you buy when you start a business is a branding package. I don't know. It kind of depends on what your business is, but I would suggest you get a few clients first so that you can pay for it. Right. But what I recommend,
absolutely,
just saying, right.
Yes,
but,
I agree.
But what I recommend to, for when it comes to selling, brand integrity, and is making sure that everyone who touches your business knows your voice, knows your core values, knows your ethics, and all of these things. So I created like a 10-page document that outlines everything about my business, and it's a brand guide. And I also have a user guide for people who stay with me long term. And it's basically like, how do I like to be communicated with? What drives me nuts? And how will I gauge if you're good or bad? And, these are really important conversations to have. So I believe it makes, a huge impact. And I will also say that I have extreme brand loyalty. Brand loyalty is worth more than a lot of things because and you can't have brand loyalty unless you have a brand, right? So
absolutely,
I would really, anyone can create a brand, a personal brand or a company brand. You just make sure you get the support you need to do so. Right. And for me, it's people know exactly what they're getting and they get it. And that level of integrity is really important to me. And I have a lot of key elements of my business, like fun, profit. I'm also no nonsense. So don't give me your excuses. Go to your therapist and then come back to do the work. So there's things that people know about me, right? And it's important because, like, for example, I have 15 people flying in this weekend that have been my clients since basically the day I opened my door. And we're doing a week-long intensive in person to work on their sales systems and all of these other things. And like, that's 3 years ago. I don't know very many coaches and consultants that have, clients that stay with them as they grow consistently for that many years, then fly to New York to work with that person in person. Like, that is a representation of my brand because I'm in true alignment of what you see right now is what you're going to get on the other side.
I agree. And so you've answered this just a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper. And you mentioned the word fun. And I loved that part on your website where you talked about how you like to have a good time. And so how does your sales mentoring approach make the selling process fun for your clients?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. So I hope there's not too many CSOs listening right now or sales leaders. Sorry, guys. For the most part, you're real boring. And
I agree.
It just is what it is. And so what happens is when you have a certain leadership sector that has a reputation for being boring, people don't want to do it. Right. And they don't want to listen to them or anything. And I think what's important is the way that I came up the ranks into what I do is I started as a sales rep. Right. And that's a very different personality in a lot of ways than a sales leader. But I carried my sales rep fun and personality into leadership. And how it's helped me and my clients is it's very motivating. People want to work hard for people that make them feel good and want to have fun with them. It's a motivational factor. And so I'd like to say part of what my brand's doing is taking down the old school way of sales leadership being dry, boring, serious, all the data, and bringing in some fun elements into it that still get the numbers you want, but in a different way that like feels way more exciting for most people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I see that in just your persona already. I mean, you look like the type of person that loves to have a good time.
I do.
And to me, you look like somebody that builds relationships very easily, which I think speaks to your upcoming weekend. The people that are going to spend the 15 people that are going to spend the weekend with you, going through your mastermind. And so, when you have that type of relationship with the people that come through your programs, they stick with you. When you start to build the relationship like that, they follow you, they trust you, they know you, they like you, they want more from you. And so you also mentioned that you help professionals master their messaging. And I think you even said that you've gone through Toastmasters. But how important is communication in sales?
Oh my gosh.
Because I can tell you've mastered communication. And so and with you being in sales, let's talk about how important that is in sales, because oftentimes you find that's missing.
Yes. I love that question. So let's break that down. So my background, I have a BA in communication from UC Santa Barbara. And if anyone's not familiar with that college, it's a research college. And what that means is they're constantly looking to improve the ways that we communicate. So what we studied, and they get paid to do so through grants and all the things. So we studied negotiation, organizational communication, emotional intelligence, nonverbal communication, and varying other elements as well. So I spent, my college life, and I almost went and got my PhD because I loved it so much. And I was on the dean's list and all of the things. So that's when I first learned the power of communication and how to use that in order to create influence. And it's really important. But the key point here is that I'm not using it recklessly to create false relationships or promote something that's not ethical. I'm using it to get, a very ethical business and approach across to my listeners, right? So you have to be responsible with your influence is what I always say, because if you got it, it's your responsibility. So that's the first thing. And then so creatively, when I was at one of my last 9-to-5s, the reason I started a Toastmasters is that it was one of those industries where it was like, if your son went to school with my son, I did business with you. Or if you golf with me, I did business with you. Or we belong to the same country club, I do business with you. And that wasn't the way I was going to get clients, because they didn't have those things. And so what I decided to do is use my communication skills to give them something else they wanted that they couldn't get elsewhere. And in that particular industry, a lot of my clients were pitching themselves to be on like professional or panels, be public speakers, not to be hired as a public speaker, but it helped them get promotions and things like that in these big organizations. So what I did is I started a Toastmasters club, which if anybody's ever started one before, is actually very hard. And it's a lot. You're starting a nonprofit. And so I started a Toastmasters club, and it was invite only to my top 50 prospects. So I invited them in, and I used what I know about influence, that now I've elevated myself not from sales rep, but mentor. And that changed the game. So not only did I help them become better communicators, get promotions, land stages, and all of these things, but I got business because of the way that I created influence and mentorship in that really, really unique way. And I don't know anybody else has ever done that before, so I thought it was pretty creative. But
Genius.
Back to my clients is I teach them all of these things. We have advanced skills training constantly. And, I have, between my BA and my sales experience, we're looking at like 15 years before I started my company. And I'm trying to collapse time for my clients because they don't have 15 years to figure this out. So I have taken all of the things that I know really move the needle, and I skip all of the unnecessary things and teach them just that. And then also with the introduction of AI, there's so many cool tools out there now that can analyze the way that I communicate and provide instant feedback. So we are integrating tools to help, So for example, now when they're using my tools after a sales call, they get an email that tells them what they did well, where they needed to improve, and what are the next steps. And that's done automatically through AI. And it's pretty darn accurate. So there's ways that we can combine the two to be really, really powerful communicators and then get what we want, which is more clients and more impact, more influence.
Wow. That's brilliant. Brilliant. So you talk about warming up and the peak pose. How can an entrepreneur warm up effectively before jumping into their peak pose in business?
Okay, so I think you're giggling because you're reading my website of how that story runs. So I'm going to tell everyone what the story is. So when I was in sales, anybody who ever has worked for a Fortune 500 in a sales role and as a territory manager knows that it is a lot of stress. Okay. And so what happened during that period of time, I was like, I've got to get a control on my stress management. Like, I'm so young, I can't do this for the rest of my life. So what I decided to do, instead of taking yoga classes, I decided I was going to get certified in hot power yoga so that I could learn the science behind stress management and flow and energy to help myself. And so that's what I did. So I went through and I'm 500 hours certified in hot power yoga. And you learned all of these really amazing things about your energy and stress and stuff like that. And so along my journey, and I mean, I did it this morning at 6 a.m. I still go to 6 a.m. hot power yoga. Like I rotate between that and my Peloton. It's like what I love. And a peak pose in yoga is something that happens towards the end of class because you've spent 40 minutes warming your body up, and then it's prepared to do like a peak pose. So for example, a bird of paradise or, another twister or an inversion or something that's combining movements and all of these things. But if you try to jump right into that without warming up, then you're going to pull a hamstring, right? Or another muscle. And so the story that I wrote about on my website, which I think is quite good and entertaining, is. And it's in alignment with my fun brand, is back in the day when I was partying a lot before my children, and we were out at like a house party, my husband and I were, and someone was like, "Hey, I heard you can do, I heard you can do this really cool pose," and it's this. If you're not a yogi, you're not going to know what I'm talking about, but it's basically like a twisting move with your leg up in the air and you're in an inversion. I can do it very well after I'm warmed up. But because I was out having fun, I thought I could just throw this party trick out there. And I went into the pose without warming up and I pulled my hamstring. Yep, pulled my hamstring. And it was horribly painful and it was very stupid. And so when I was opening up my business, I was thinking about that experience. And I'm like, that's the equivalent of it has a lot to do with sales. So if you don't learn how to prospect, if you don't learn how to book calls, if you don't learn how to close calls, then all the other things you build in your business don't matter because they're peak pose. Mm-hmm. The perfect brand, the perfect everything. It's not going to matter because no matter how many leads you generate, you can't close. Mm-hmm. So the moral of the story is learn that so that you can create this beautiful brand, have all this influence and get everything you want in life. But you got to know sales first because that's the lifeblood of any company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to get that first. Actually, your employee sent that to me. And when I read that, I was like, this is such a cool analogy.
Oh my God, I love it. Good. They're doing a good job.
Yes, I saw that. And I was like, this is such a cool analogy. I love that. And so I thought I've got to be sure somehow and somewhere I ask about that, to explain pulling a hammy and warming up before jumping into the peak pose. So yeah, that was great. And I love how you pull all of that into the business concept because it's so perfect. But it's very obvious that you love what you do and that you love sales. What strategies do you recommend for entrepreneurs to fall in love with selling?
Oh, I love that. So first of all, what most people skip is they don't write their mission statement. They don't have a vision statement. They don't have core values. They're just like floundering, trying to make money and build this business. So my number one recommendation is sit down, with a glass of wine or your favorite beverage, and decide why you're doing this and why you're going to get up every morning and who you're going to help, not from a marketing standpoint, but a heart-centered standpoint. And that would be the first step to healing your relationship with sales and being excited about it. Step number one. Step number two, if you really hate sales and you're the person who gets on sales calls and you start sweating and like freaking out and you're not yourself anymore, there's usually a reason why. And it usually is something that's happened to you in the past that's now carrying on to the phone call or to the Zoom call. And so it's really important that you think like, what sales experience did I have in my life or life experience that happened that's impacting the way that I'm communicating? And then how can I overcome that? And it's really, really critical. I've actually never met anyone that struggles with sales that didn't have something in the closet behind them that's making them feel that way. So some things I can help with, other things require additional help that I'm not qualified for. So I refer out for that. But for example, I'll give you one that I am qualified to support with is, let's say you were sold something in the past that you didn't really need, but you felt like you needed at the moment. And you had buyer's remorse afterwards. And then you kind of blame the person who got you into it. Okay. So what that creates is a story loop of I can't charge that much money and I don't want to sell because people will regret it. And I never want anyone to feel the way that I felt last time this happened to me. And this is the mental loop. Right? Well, 90% of what we communicate is subconscious. So now instead of being confident on sales calls and excited to bring people into your world, all you're thinking about the one time you got screwed, right? Yep. And whose responsibility was it? Is it yours or theirs? And I always say, you never lose. You either win or you learn. So instead of holding a grudge on that past experience, you're going to learn from it. And you're going to make sure that your clients are qualified and should work with you before you sell them. Now let's go sell. So those are two really important pieces.
Or they felt pressured into the sale and they're afraid they're going to pressure someone into the sale. There's so many of those loops, Michelle, that you're talking about.
So many. Yep. And they'll drive you crazy if you don't get rid of them. So that's a really big thing. The third thing I'd like to say is even before you're ready to hire a sales team, there are so many things that a CRM can do for you in terms of automation that will change your life. Like automation is your first employee. I just want to say that. There 100%. You can spend maybe less than $200 per month and automate more than you could possibly imagine. Does it take a while? Yeah. You're going to have to carve a weekend, go lock yourself in a hotel room if you want, whatever you want to do. Okay. But if you have the plan and you can automate things in your sales system, I always say your CRM's your first sales assistant. So go hire her. Okay.
Yes.
It's really important that you have those foundations. And if you do it right from the beginning, it also makes it a lot easier to onboard, train, and get somebody successfully selling for you.
I love it. So looking back at your journey as we start to go into the close, looking back at your journey, what's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self starting out in the sales field?
Ooh, wow. Let's see here. Regardless if you're a sales professional or an entrepreneur doing your sales, I challenge you to get as many no's as you can as fast as you can.
That's good. That's good.
That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's really good. And so let's say, I'm going to paint a picture here. There's someone out in the community that needs Sales Success Lounge or Startup Sales Leadership Academy. What type of influence, problems, opportunities do they have to know that they need that program?
Sure. That's a great question. So the Sales Success Lounge is my monthly sales coaching membership, and it's designed for the solopreneur who's trying to master their sales skills and create really simple systems for call booking and closing. It is a wonderful community. So if those are things you struggle with or you want to optimize, I highly recommend that you go check out that sales page, salessuccesslounge.com. The Startup Sales Leadership Institute's Academy is the other one that you referred to. And the Academy is designed for that scaling CEO that's really ready to go and hire their first salesperson. So in less than 5 weeks, we build out all of your systems, we prepare your business, and you hit that job post and you're ready to rock and roll to hire your first sales professional. And so I would really encourage you to go and check that out. Now, if you're not sure, and maybe you're in between or you're unsure if sales is really your problem or if you have another problem, then I encourage you to go book a call with me and let's talk through your business, what your growth goals are. And so we can see if we're in alignment to support you. And that call will be with me or my team members. We all take sales calls. So we're on rotation. It's called Round Robin. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I stay in the game in these conversations because it's my art and my craft. So I will always take some so that I can stay cutting edge. So I would really encourage you to book that call so that you can experience what advisors actually do. And that's what I think me and my sales teams are, is we're advisors. And we help you determine what your real problems are in your business. And if we can help you, we will. If not, we will do our best to point you in the right direction.
Perfect. So if they are interested and want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yes. Okay. So I'm sure we're going to do lots of links in the comment section
and the show notes.
But salessuccessblueprint.com is where you'll find my calendar. And also, I would encourage you to come hang out with me on LinkedIn or Facebook and send me a message and tell me that you listened to this episode. That would mean a lot to me. I would love to hear your feedback and if I helped or supported you in any way.
Perfect. I love that. So whether you are listening to this episode on your mobile or on your phone, on your computer, I want you to do me a favor and reach over and hit that subscribe button right now. This helps me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers, and it gives you a notification when the next podcast goes live. I appreciate your support as an active listener to Influence and Growth Mastery. And until next week, have a blessed week, and I'll be back very soon.